Hey friends, it's Sunshine and welcome once more to my studio. So I always get asked a buttload of questions about being an illustrator, and someone asked me the other day, how do I hire an illustrator? That's a really good question, and I thought it was good enough to actually make a whole video about it. Be aware that this is going to be a very talk-heavy episode, so if you don't want me to keep prattling on and talk your ear off, maybe skip to next week's episode. So the first question to ask is, do I actually need an illustrator? Okay, so you're an author and you have a brand new shiny manuscript finished and you're wondering, how do I even go about hiring or even finding someone to draw all the pretty pictures that I've got in mind? Well, before we even get started, let's talk about should you actually be looking for an illustrator. One day maybe I'll make a video on how to go from start to finish of getting a kid's book published on the shelf, but one of the big things to talk about here are the publishing paths. So let me say to you that best and the easiest method you can follow in getting your book made is to get it through a publisher and get them to take on your story. Most publishing houses will actually have procedures for you to pitch your story ideas on their websites, and it does take a bit of time and sometimes it can be a bit disappointing and frustrating. If you can secure a publisher, things will be much easier and much better for you in your career. Not only do they take care of everything, but they pay you a residual and they give you royalties. So you get real money straight off the bat, which is always a good thing. A little hint though, if you end up paying for a publisher, well, let's just say it's not such a good thing. But the big thing here is that they pay the illustrator. They book the illustrator, they pay the illustrator and handle all the contacts. So this means no, you as an author do not have to choose or find anyone. In fact, in the publisher situation, it's rare that the author gets to interact with the illustrator at all or have any say in how the book will end up looking. Okay, so yeah, it may feel like you're losing a bit of control, and you are, but picture books are a collaboration between the writer and the illustrator and the publisher. All three of these things combining like a giant shiny Power Ranger to make your book look better than the sum of its parts. The benefits definitely outweigh the negatives and everything's handled, your book ends up in real stores and you get paid, which is nice. But no, if you find a publisher, you don't need to hire an illustrator. Now this is different, of course, if you're a writer who's self-publishing, then yes, you get a complete control over the project, and this includes who your illustrator is, and naturally you get more say in what and how they illustrate it. But you have to find the right person, and of course pay them out of your pocket. Where to look for an illustrator? So this is an easy question. There are actually illustration bodies all set up to showcase illustrators' work across the world, where you can just go and pick out whoever you want. For your country, just Google it, but here in Australia, three of the best places to look at are Illustrators Australia, the Style File, and Squibbie, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Squibbie actually has branches all over the world, so there's a good chance that they have a branch near you too. Or you can just contact the illustrators directly. Instagram and Facebook are extremely good tools to find the right person. Start punching in keywords you like and associate with your book and just see who pops up. Nothing catching your eye? Try looking through certain hashtags. Hashtag kidlit, hashtag kidlit art, hashtag kidlit illustrator, hashtag children's illustrator are just a few that are chock full of professional illustrators. You might even find some of my work there. What do you look for in your illustrator? Make sure their work and their specific style speaks to you. It doesn't have to be exactly the style you want or the pictures they have previously done exactly what you need, but it helps if you can envision your story told by their work. When it feels right, it just feels right. There are a couple of other things which are really important considerations when you're looking for an illustrator. Can they reproduce their own work? Can they tell a story visually? Have they ever actually done a book before? And do you get along with them personally? Okay, so can they reproduce their work? This one is really important because particularly if you're finding someone who hasn't got a great deal of experience working with books, can they recreate your characters in different poses and environments successfully? Between you and me, most kids' books are a series of characters in different situations and environments. Looking consistently similar through the book is mega important. Can they tell a story visually? Do you want someone who illustrates a flat world where characters throw words at each other, or do you want a world where the reader becomes part of it? Wide establishing shots, close-ups for emotion, light, color, shadows, perspective, all of these are important. If your illustrator always draws the same thing in the same pose, it'll be super duper boring. Do they have a proven record? So this is not a crucial one, everyone has to start somewhere, but it certainly helps if they've produced illustrated books before and know how to work through all the difficulties. For you, particularly if you're a first-time author, this can be really helpful and get an illustrator who knows their way around a book. They know exactly what you want from them and how to give it to you, and can make sure there are less issues with the whole entire process. And finally, do you like them? Nobody wants to work with someone they don't like, and you'll be working pretty closely with this person, particularly in self-publishing. It's a huge collaborative process. Not only do you need to develop a trusting relationship with your illustrator, but it also really helps if you genuinely look forward to chatting with them. Make your pitch. So after you find someone, don't get 100% locked onto one illustrator. Why? Because they might say no. It's likely something you haven't considered. Illustrators are artists. Your story has to speak to them. They have to get visuals from it. They have to love it. They actually have to want to do it. If you're looking at an illustrator that just wants your money, run away fast. So how do you make the illustrator you've chosen love your story as much as you do? Well, simple. Sell your story and sell yourself. What this means is you need to make a pitch. Start with a synopsis, or better yet, have a finished manuscript of your awesome story. Send the illustrator reference work you like, preferably reference work from them. Tell them where you see the book fitting into the market and how you're going to sell it when you're done. I even recommend sending your story to a professional editor before you contact your illustrator. Just the fact that you've done that tells the illustrator that you're serious. Do everything you can to have your story 100% finished to the best of your ability. Then sell yourself. Talk yourself up, tell them your passion, tell them your loves, make it sound like you're fully vested in this story and it's going to be amazing. Bear in mind they still might say no, and it's probably not because your story sucks. It just hasn't captured their imagination, which is okay and good, because if they were to say yes to a story they don't like, they're not going to be 100% invested in it. You want an illustrator who's going to make your story sing because they believe in it and they love it. You might also find that the illustrator you want is too busy. Sometimes illustrators have waiting lists, and so will give you dates that might be quite away in the future, and sometimes you might not be able to get them at all. Something else to keep in mind is that a lot of illustrators don't take self-published work, which they'll often state on their website, so go have a look at that. Self-publishing is a lot of work for an illustrator because it is such a collaborative process, and some illustrators just want to illustrate and not have to deal with all the other stuff. Of course, you can still send in your pitch to them. Who knows, they might love it. At the very least, they'll appreciate that you love their work enough to try and convince them to do your book. What the illustrator will give you. Okay, again, this differs from illustrator to illustrator, so take this one with a really big grain of salt. So you've both agreed on a style and the manuscript is broken down into pages. For me, one of the first things I do is provide character sketches, so the author and I can both work out what the little characters are gonna look like. Once this is worked out and approved, it's a lot easier for me to move along into the storyboarding. So the storyboarding is a page-by-page breakdown of what everything's going to look like. They can be any size, but they're basically line art sketches, so everything can start taking shape. Here we work out landscapes, world, secondary characters, perspective, all of the things basically, because it's a lot easier and a lot quicker to work stuff out in this small and undetailed format than the large-scale art pieces. When you're happy with the storyboard and it's been signed off, we move on to the large-scale sketches. These are like a precursor to the final artwork, so any final edits can be worked out here, and once these are all done and once more approved by you, the author, only then do we start the final artworks. Depending on the detail and the time required, 1 to 3 months later, you get your artwork. One thing the illustrator doesn't provide is final layout design. Layout design is done by a graphic or layout designer. That's the person who puts everything together, puts in your words and makes it look like a book so you can get it printed. Some illustrators will have a graphic design background and can help here, but most will only do the illustrations. Pay! So the big one, payments. There are two types of payment methods illustrators usually work with, a profit percentage and a buyout. Profit percentage is usually coupled with a residual and is the primary way a publisher works. This means for every book sold, after your residual check has been paid off, you get a percentage of sales after the costs. A buyout, on the other hand, is basically that. You buy out the rights to the illustrator's art and you use it for the purpose you have specified for as few or as many times as you like. If you are a self-published author, very, very few illustrators will go with anything but a buyout. It's just too much of a risk for the time required to do the work. The big one. How much do I pay an illustrator? Well, I'd like to say $1 million, but it depends on a lot of factors. The biggest one is being time and detail. If it's simple and quick, it'll be much cheaper than if it's a slow, detailed process. I personally do watercolor, and that usually takes around 3-ish months to finish a project. So that should give you an idea of the work required. Real world dollar wise, every country is different, but every country has an illustrators association or a writers association that has recommended rates, usually on their website. It's a really good idea to get to know these associations as they are your colleagues and generally pretty awesome folk. In Australia, you pay by the page and can expect to pay anywhere from $300 up to $2,000 plus per those pages. Covers generally cost substantially more. This is usually not paid in a lump sum, it's paid on a schedule. I work on a 40% upon acceptance of the job, 30% on acceptance and approval of the sketches, and a further 30% on delivery of the final large-scale artworks. I think this is a good percentage breakdown, and I definitely would recommend it to anyone, author or illustrator, following something similar. Okay, so let's squeeze in contracts here. A contract is a really good idea, particularly with a new client, so you both know what to expect and when. The author needs to know what to pay and when, and the illustrator needs to know what they need produced by what time. A contract kind of removes any confusion on either part. Again, the best place to go for these are industry bodies or art bodies in your country. Usually that sort of contract is a free download and you can just fill in your details. Contracts may feel all adult and a bit scary, guys, but particularly with people you don't know, it'll make everyone's life so much easier. Finally, a warning, yes, you can go cheap, but you know the old saying, you get what you pay for, and it's 100% true and more when you're having your book illustrated. The amount of emails I've received from people about this is absolutely crazy, and those stories never end well. Well, that's it. You now know how and when to hire an illustrator, and hopefully a little bit about the business side to make things a little bit easier. Don't forget, being an illustrator is a business, but it's also an art form. So this means there will be a ton of people who do things differently and they swear it's the only way to do things. Just take your time choosing your illustrator, ask questions, and both you and the illustrator will end up with an awesome book. Everyone I've ever met in the publishing industry is just a lovely human. So when in doubt, just ask and you'll get all the help you need. And look, if you totally get stuck and you just don't know who fits with your story, well, check out my work and see if you like my style. Just hire me. Okay guys, that is it for today. If you've got any thoughts on illustrators and authors working together or authors hiring illustrators, please pop them in the comments below. If I get enough stuff there, I might do a working with illustrators part 2. As usual, make sure you check out my Instagram and Facebook. Facebook particularly at the moment because I have my book club coming up and I should have the first update on that out by the time that this comes out. So go check that out. There's lots of outs. We're reading Anne of Green Gables at the moment and we're having a really great time. Well, we will. We're working on the talking about the things. So go check that out. Otherwise, I'm still doing Twitch at 8 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time every Friday night. So come say hi. But that is it. Until next time, which will hopefully be next week, stay safe, everybody, and keep on painting. Bye.